it's Senegal versus England.
Hmm.
And England, coming off their final game, made a couple changes against Wales that looked like they were pretty good. So I wanted to get your ideas of England going into this matchup against this Senegal team.
I think that this is going to be a very interesting game because we've seen pretty much England in the group stages. They dominated Iran and they dominated Wales very convincingly. And then they played a very poor match against the United States. And in my opinion, the United States was the second best team in this group by a good amount. Even though the United States weren't able to do that well against Wales, they are much better than Wales. It's just the facts. So in the only game that the United States or that England played a kind of somewhat decent opponent, they capitulated. They didn't play their ball. They didn't play how they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put Senegal on a very similar level with that. Senegal without Mane, I put them on a very similar level to the United States. Maybe slightly better for Senegal, because they have some world class players, but it's not too big of a difference. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this game plays out. I think Senegal, they have a very strong defense, and they're going to be tough to break down. Led by Koulibaly, who just scored his first international goal. It's going to be very interesting to see that it's this English attack versus this Senegalese defense. It's going to come down to that, I think. For England, it's going to be, for me, how does their lineup come out? I think that they have some lineup question marks at this point. And I think we're going to both give our kind of projected lineup in a second here. But I think there are some clear changes that should be made for England, kind of going forward. And if these changes are made, some proper attacking changes, I think that England should win this game convincingly, in my opinion. I don't think Senegal, without Mane, have the attacking firepower to really give this England team a true test. I think that this English defense, even though on paper, you might say, oh, it's Harry Maguire, he can make some mistakes. For England, he seems to be a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah,
think that
he plays very good for England.
this English defense is going to be able to slam the door shut on the Senegalese attack without Sadio Mane. And I find it hard to believe it would be anything other than a convincing England win.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And especially after the Wales performance, where the Gareth Southgate actually looked like he showed something. Finally choosing to start Phil Foden, and he played Marcus Rashford. And who would have thought? Who would have guessed? Phil Foden had a great game. Phil Foden put in an absolute masterclass, along with Rashford. Rashford and Phil Foden played brilliantly. They played so well that it's brought up questions. Are they now undroppable? Do not start them, because it would baffle me more if at least Phil Foden doesn't get in the team. Like I think after that game, it's already proven that there's not a stratosphere, there's not a planet, there's in this galaxy where Sterling should be playing over Phil Foden. That's just not happening. Even if Sterling was 10 years younger, there's not a chance. This guy, this Phil Foden, I just love how this kid plays. He plays absolutely brilliantly. I love his style of football. I love his way of play. Just how what he does for this England team is great. His finishing, his creativeness, it's just everything that they need, because that's what England seem to struggle on. Sometimes they need a bit of creativity that they're not creating the chances, and I think that's what this guy brings. I think that's what Phil Foden brings.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what they bring on with Rashford, because Rashford can play on that wing, but he can also slot in the middle. He can go. He can play striker, and that's something I think Saka can't really do, because sometimes Kane will drop back, but then Rashford can go and fill in that spot and take that number 9 role. Something Saka I don't think can do, even though Saka's playing very well for Arsenal. Look, that's probably the hardest thing leaving this game. Saka or Rashford? Who do you start right now? Rashford's on untouchable form right now. He's unplayable. Right now you have to play him. And when Rashford gets hot like this, this is something that I wish we saw from him all the time, because it reminds me back when he broke out in 2017. This guy that who he was destined to be on top of the world, but just inconsistency. But when he's firing, when he's playing, Marcus Rashford's available. He's brilliant. I love watching him when he's on form.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting what Gareth Southgate does, because this Senegal team, they're a tough team. They're a tough team to break down. They have a they've gone it. They've won it on in the continent. You know, they are continental champions, and I I think they're going to be a tough team to break down. And I would say, if I were to put a score prediction on it, I think it would be a 2-0. Depending on if Garrett Southgate starts Phil Foden, I say 2-0. If he doesn't, then I see an ugly 1-0.
Yeah, for me, I can agree with that. It all comes down to what is this lineup going to look like, and I wanted to get a kind of a predicted lineup per se from both of us in a little bit, and just in a second here. But
Hmm.
I can 100% agree. I think that if Garrett Southgate plays the correct players, I think that this is going to be a dominant England win. However, do I have 100% belief that Garrett Southgate will not just revert back to what we saw against the United States with the kind of a very similar lineup to that? I don't know. I think that Garrett Southgate kind of knew that the Wales game didn't mean much for them. They were going to win the group kind of regardless, and I think that's kind of why they rotated some players per se. But in my opinion, the guys that they rotated might have been better than some of the original starters. So that's what
Yeah.
puts some big question marks for me. Like, what lineup are we really going to get from this English team? It's something that, at this point in the tournament, you probably like to have your clear cut lineup, all dusted and on the chalkboard by now. But England, they don't quite have that. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this team plays out. I have my kind of predicted lineup. What I would like to see. I don't know if I'll go first if you want me to.
Yeah, you go first. Yeah, you go first.
So
I
if
want to
I'm
hear what you
Garrett
got.
Southgate, if I'm Garrett Southgate against Senegal, this is the lineup that I'm playing. I'm playing a 4-3-3 because I think, or a four, either way, whether they play a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, you use the
Yeah.
same players. For my opinion, is just I don't know. So for me, goalkeeper Jordan Pickford, no doubt. Left back Luke Shaw.
Hmm.
The two center backs Harry Maguire, John Stones. Right back Kyle Walker. Keep the same defense you've been playing. It's very strong. They do the job. Center mid Jude Bellingham. Center mid Declan Rice. They have been doing amazing this World Cup. And then get me Phil Foden in this midfield. Get me Phil Foden in this midfield. Do not put Mason Mount back in this team. Look, I love Mason Mount. I'm a Chelsea fan. I got the kid on right now. But Mason Mount, he's not on form right now. He's not doing what Phil Foden can do. And we just saw Phil Foden get one opportunity against Wales and immediately gets a goal. Mason Mount has been putting up disaster classes so far this World Cup. He's been putting up horror shows. He's been making the English fans cry. He's been making
Yeah,
them
he's
boo.
he's just kind of not. Yeah, he's kind of not been there.
He's not been doing what he needs to do, and ultimately he seems to be one of those players that Gareth Southgate kind of favors, and that's why it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Because will he revert back to Mason Mount or will he put the guy who's on proper good form, Phil Foden, in? I do not know. But if I'm Gareth Southgate, give me Phil Foden. And then this front three, this is where it gets interesting here. Give me Saka on the right, Rashford on the left, and then give me Harry Kane at striker. You were saying, who are you going to play, Saka or Rashford? Give me both. Get Raheem Sterling out of there, and give
Yeah,
me
absolutely.
Saka, who's on amazing form for England and Arsenal right now. He scored 2 goals in the opener against Iran, and then give me Marcus Rashford, who right now is tied for the lead in Golden Boot with 3 goals. He's on amazing form, and then Harry Kane, the distributor that can do it all. He can score and he can also link up the play like a true number 9. He is so
I
good.
think he's finally starting to develop that to where he's truly a very good 9 that he's able to drop back and link
He's
up
able to do
play.
it all.
And I think that's something we haven't really seen from Harry Kane that much because we've always known him as the goal scorer, as the leading marksman. But even when he can't get it going, that's why I like to see comparing to Lautaro Martinez that if you're not firing on goal scoring, then make up for it in something else, and that's what Harry Kane's doing for this team. But I'll let you continue.
No, 100%. And that's my lineup. That's what I would play. If I'm Garrett Southgate, that's the lineup that I'm bringing out here. And whether or not you play a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, they played a 4-3-3 against Wales, and the other 2 games they played 4-2-3-1. Either way, these players can play either way. Probably you would want Rashford a little bit higher up the pitch than being a left winger rather than a left mid, but he can play there. He's played there for Manchester United. He's done the job there before, and I think it's if Harry Kane wasn't around, you probably play him at striker based on how he's been firing right now. but you're just not dropping Harry Kane, are you? He's the captain. You're just not dropping him.
Absolutely not.
So, but
Yeah,
but
absolutely not.
with that being said, you have to find a way to get Rashford into this team because of how good he's been playing. You just have to. And I said it coming into the World Cup. Get Raheem Sterling out of this starting 11. I don't care that he was your main talisman along with Harry Kane last World Cup. I don't care that he had a decent Euros. All I care about is current form and what's been going on right now. For Chelsea, he wasn't quite firing that good coming into the World Cup. And so far in the World Cup, what has he done? He hasn't really done anything. So you have to trust the guys who are actually firing right now. Saka, Rashford. Those should be the wingers. No doubt in my mind.
Absolutely. I would have to agree with that.
And I
I
want to hear
think
your starting 11 here.
yeah, I was about to harp on that I think we almost agree on every single player. The only thing I would personally change, I think it's not something Southgate would do. I would start a 4-4-2. So I would stick with Pickford in goal, Maguire and Stones, Kyle Walker, and Shaw. Keep the defense right.
Mhm.
Then in those two midfield spots, you have Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice because those guys are young enough to keep that midfield. They can run a two-man midfield because I think they both have the engines and they both have the box-to-box capability to do that. And on the right mid and left mid, on the right, I would take Saka. On the left, that's where I'd put in Phil Foden. I put Phil Foden in there as a bit of a free
Mhm.
roam. Let him, go in between the midfield and attack. Have him that free range. And then the two strikers, I would have the pairing of Harry Kane and Marcus Rashford, just because I think Marcus Rashford is a better striker than he is a winger. And the way that I would picture this team up is that Harry Kane would sit back a bit more and let Marcus Rashford be right there on the last defender. Let Harry Kane
Uh-huh.
get the ball. Let him try and feed Marcus Rashford, or if not, let him feed it to Phil Foden. Let him switch it to Saka. Having that more of a two punch striker duo, I think would work a lot better, especially with Rashford being on form right now. And I think it opens up. But unfortunately, like hearing these lineups, like creating this lineup, I literally think both of the lineups we said, those teams win the World Cup. Even against like Argentina or even against France, if they play this lineup, and we know how good these players can play, how gifted they are, how great they are individually. That's those teams easily can win the World Cup, easily without
Mhm.
a doubt. But I just know that's not what we're gonna get. It's not what's gonna happen. He's probably gonna play. Gareth Southgate's gonna play a 4-3-3, and if I were to guess, he's probably gonna play Sterling. He's gonna play Sterling. He's gonna play Saka,
He's gonna
because
play Mason Mount.
if I yeah, he's gonna play Mason Mount. If I were to put myself in the brain of a very boring man, he's probably looking at this as okay. Our last game was against Wales. It didn't really matter. Now we're going to a serious, round of 16. Time to put in the veteran Sterling, who's been here and done that. Saka, who he just likes more. Mason Mount, who he just likes more. I think that's what he's gonna do, and it's gonna be of the detriment of England, and hopefully, you know, I don't even know if I want England to get by. I mean, if they play this lineup, I kind of hope they lose just so we can finally, stop letting Southgate get by with mediocrity. I'm tired of it, man. I'm tired of him just getting by, playing these shitty tactics and playing these, not the correct 11s that, a normal person would, you give anybody that actually watch. Does Gareth Southgate watch the Premier League? I really question if he watches the Premier League at this point, just because, just even the fact that Madison can't sniff this team, like James Madison is, when you talk about creativity, he's such a creative player,
He is.
and every time I watch this England team, that's where they struggle. They struggle in creativeness. Look, I was surprised Trent actually got to play. Like,
I
I
was as
I
well.
I had to I had to check outside, I had to walk outside a little bit and see if the sky was falling. I couldn't believe Trent was getting minutes played, and it was nice to see Kyle Walker's back and fit. Hopefully, he can get back to 100%. But this England team, like we said, going into the tournament, they have just I feel like a broken record talking about it, that they just have more than enough talent to win this World Cup. It's their golden generation. This is the best shot they have, and it hurts my soul to know that that it's possibly is going to get wasted.
Yeah, we talked about that before, like this golden generation of English talent potentially being wasted again, similar to the previous one with David Beckham and Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard. But the fact that this generation is getting wasted because they prefer Gareth Southgate to manage this team rather than anybody else, it's appalling to me, and I would be shocked, not even just shocked. I would have to go outside and see if the sun is imploding, if Earth is about to blow up, if he plays Phil Foden, if he plays Marcus Rashford, if he plays these guys who I think he should play, I won't believe it. But
I'm gonna grab the
I
lottery.
just know, like you said, we're gonna end
It's
up
not
getting,
happening.
we're gonna
It's
get
not
pretty
happening.
much the lineup that England played against the United States, even though they played terrible that game. I just know it's pretty much gonna be that lineup with Kyle Walker in there instead of Trippier because he's actually healthy now. It's pretty much going to be the same lineup as the United States game, just with Kyle Walker. And I would be shocked if it isn't,
Just yeah.
even though, I said what I would play, and I would love to see this lineup. I think whether or not you play,
Your
if
lineup
England,
was yeah, like your lineup was actually very attacking. And as soon as I
it
heard
was
Phil Foden in the midfield, I was like, no shot, no shot,
no, there's
no
no
shot
shot.
in hell,
There's no shot.
no shot in hell.
But
You
see,
got
the
a
thing
better
is, though,
chance of winning the fucking Powerball, bro.
in my opinion, given the fact that you have Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham in the midfield, I think you can get away with playing Phil Foden in the midfield. I think you can get away with it. But you
Yeah,
just know
absolutely.
you just know that Gareth Southgate isn't doing that. He wants to play more defensive football for God knows why. I don't know, but that's what he wants to
Because
do.
how that three-man midfield would work, you have Declan Rice as the guy that sits back, Jude Bellingham as the box to box, and then you have the attacking flair, the guy that is more involved in the attack, who can connect it. It makes sense. It's just when you're drawing up what you want in the midfield, that's how you picture it. Those three roles, that's how usually all-time great midfield work. But I don't know. Maybe Mason Mount is like the second coming of David Beckham or some shit. Maybe I just don't know. Maybe I need a new TV or something. I need glasses, contacts, laser eye surgery. Maybe I'm missing something.
Maybe Mason Mount is doing some stuff in training that we don't get
He's
to see, that he's like, oh my God, I
bro.
gotta
They,
get
they
this guy
got
in
they
the
gotta
team.
they gotta release the footage. Is this guy like just doing like some madness or looking like Ronaldinho or something? Like what is he doing
He
in the
must
training
he
camp
must
that's
be
making
looking
him like
like
he's
he must be
undroppable?
he must be doing some Ronaldinho skills mixed with Ronaldo bicycle kicks and all of that.
Ronaldo finishes.
He's looking like the best English midfielder that there's ever been. That's the only thing I could imagine, because that the way that Gareth Southgate puts this guy, I think he's the first name he puts on the team sheet when he's making his
Because
starting
like
11. It's Mason Mount first, and then everybody else.
Mason Mount's in it. Like because I don't get like I've been trying to sit here for like the past like 10-15 minutes that we've been talking about this. What exactly does Mason Mount do that's better than Phil Foden?
Like, this is
Well,
me. This is me as a Chelsea fan. Like, Mason Mount hasn't been on great form this season in general. So, like, if you're just looking based on what's been going on in the Premier League coming into the World Cup, Mason Mount has not had a good year so far. And in terms of just player versus player, who's playing better, it's obviously Phil Foden. But then skill set, who has a better overall skill set based on what we've seen throughout their careers? Phil Foden, he wipes the floor with Mason Mount. He just
because
does.
I can't even see it at the point to like maybe you could say oh Mason Mount drops back more. Does he? I
Does
mean,
he? I don't think so.
because the only thing I could think of, like people say, oh, like Phil Foden's too attacking to play midfield. I mean, then what's Mason Mount? Mason Mount doesn't even attack that well, and he doesn't
Mason Mount
defend that
isn't
well.
offering you that
What
much
does he do
defensively, if
exactly?
anything. That's what I'm saying. That's my thing. He's not offering you that much defensively, but then his forte.
Is he dropping
Okay,
back more? I don't
like
get it.
like Mason Mount, he's hanging his hat on the offensive side of the ball, on picking the right passes, playing good passes to Harry Kane, and also potentially scoring goals. He's not scoring goals. He's not picking the right passes. He's losing the ball in midfield. Like, I don't understand how you can see the success Phil Foden had, even though it was on the wing, against Wales, and then look at Mason Mount and say, "Yep, I'm going back to you." What has he done to deserve this? What has he done?
I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It's
Like the only thing I could
undefend.
think of is
It's
that
yeah.
given the fact that Phil Foden for Manchester City does play on the wing a lot, not quite in the central. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe Southgate is
Yeah, like
thinking
maybe yeah, he has some
there's
yeah.
there's there's only there's only so many spots you can play. There's only so many winger spots. Like there's only two wingers, and there's so many good wingers on this team. You're looking at potentially Rashford playing on the wing. You're looking at Foden potentially playing on the wing. Sterling,
Yeah.
Saka. There's so many guys who could play only two positions, and he's thinking, look, Phil Foden, he's not always in the midfield, but he when he started from Manchester City, he was a center attacking mid. He was a
And
midfielder, a
I think
proper
that I think that's
central.
really what he plays the best, but
I think so as
he's
well.
just
I
that
think I think he's
yeah,
forced to
he's
play
just
out
that
wide for
guy.
Manchester City because of the depth of Man City. But
Yeah, like you
if
have
if
Kevin De
Man City
Bruyne.
wasn't
Yeah, I
as
mean,
good as
he's
they
not better than
were,
Kevin De Bruyne.
no, exactly. But if
Yeah,
if Kevin De
exactly.
Bruyne wasn't there, Phil Foden would take his spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for some reason, Gareth Southgate doesn't think that this guy can play centrally or something. I don't know. I think everyone with a brain can know that. Look, for a central midfielder, give me Phil Foden. For a central attacking midfielder, give me Phil Foden. But Gareth Southgate thinks otherwise. And I'm wearing the Chelsea shirt. The Chelsea fans might be mad at me for saying this, but Mason Mount is not good. He's not that good, especially this season. Mason Mount has had his flashes. He's a good player, but based on current form,
He's a
he's
solid
just not.
player. He's
He's a
decent.
very
He's decent.
he's a very
Yeah.
solid player, but he's just not quite on good form at the moment, and just the whole season. There's no reason.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying you never bring him on again. You put him into the bench with Trent and you never bring him on. No, you can sub him on. He offers something, but there's no reason should be starting in such a critical, crucial round of 16 match.
Yeah, because just on the simple fact that it's not disrespectful to back maybe a couple seasons ago. This was a conversation because they were both young. They both basically came up together.
Mhm.
But we've seen the separation. Phil Foden has taken that next step, and Mason Mount hasn't. And not to say Mason Mount's a horrible player, but he isn't of the upper echelon. He's a very good player. I'll probably hold him up there, maybe with a Declan Rice. Just Declan Rice has a role in this team, and Declan Rice does that role. But Mason Mount doesn't necessarily have a true role in this team. So that's why it's not really working. And when Phil Foden, well, obviously we re-rate Phil Foden very highly. So when you're comparing like a guy that I think is the third best player on this whole England squad,
Yeah.
arguably on his day, he's top two. And obviously Mason Mount is nowhere near that for me. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's always gonna come off of like it's somewhat disrespectful, but I mean, it's just the level of Phil Foden of how good this guy is, but not to say Mount's horrible. I just don't think there's not a walk of life that Mason Mount does anything better than Phil Foden. It's just at this moment, there's nothing has shown me that Mason Mount does this better than Phil Foden.
100%. It's not a total knock on Mason Mount by any stretch of the imagination. It just goes to show that the depth of this England team and how solid it is, and why they should be a World Cup contender, because they are loaded in pretty much every position. And the fact that you can have this debate between Mason Mount and Phil Foden, a lot of national teams would love to be able to have this debate. Who you should be playing, who should be on the bench. Look, Mason Mount starts for pretty much almost, for a lot of national teams. I'm not going to say every single national team, but, he's not getting into the Brazil side. He's not getting into France or whatever. I mean, to be fair, he's probably better than Griezmann right now. So maybe he does get into France.
He could. I mean, right now he could get in the Brazil team. I mean, I'd play him over Fred. They started Fred the other game, man. I mean, I'd play him over Fred. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
But that's a debate for another time.
But yeah,
the point is,
that's the consensus of
the point is that so many national teams would love to have a Mason Mount, and the fact that England are blessed to have Phil Foden and Mason Mount, it's not a knock on Mason Mount. It's just Phil Foden is the better player on better form, and he's more clinical in front of goal. He's able to play the killer passes. He can do everything that Mason Mount can do, but better. So there's no reason he should be on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've sat here talking about Mason
we
Mount
on
versus
a bit of
Foden for
a
10 minutes. No. We've talked. My point where I was going with that We've talked about these two guys for 10 minutes, pretty much, saying why Phil Foden is better. But come Sunday, I think when they play, we know how it's gonna be.
Yeah,
Mason Mount,
we know what's gonna
Mason
happen.
Mount is gonna be in that starting
That
11.
it it doesn't hurt the dream. It doesn't hurt the dream.